Hi, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to join me for this restorative class today. All of the proceeds from this video are going to be going to Flathead Valley's Abbey Shelter, which is an organization that's here to support those who have been sexually or domestically abused or engaged in violence in those areas of their life. We are going to have a nice restorative class today, so it'll be pretty mellow, and I'm really not going to get into many technical details, but more so creating a space to rest and restore. Overall, you're going to need some blankets and a bolster, and maybe something with a little bit more support, such as a pair of blocks or potentially even a chair. If you don't have any bolsters, then make sure to have some extra blankets nearby. We're going to go ahead and start with a supported back bend. So you're going to grab at least 2 to 3 blankets. And if you have a bolster, you can grab a bolster and potentially 2 blankets. We're going to add a flatter support underneath the head and a rolled blanket underneath the upper back. So with one of your blankets, if you were to unfold it lengthwise, you're actually going to unfold it once more from there. Then we're going to go ahead and roll the long edge of that blanket. Now, if you're familiar with back bends and you don't have any chronic low back pain, you might even be able to add a second rolled blanket on top of that one. So again, usually we fold them like this at home, or some might know this as shelf fold. We'll unfold it once. From there, you can unfold it twice for a little bit less support, once for a little bit more support. Back bends tend to be emotional stabilizers, and they can also be a little bit more invigorating. Again, if you have any chronic low back pain, it's better to have just this small rolled blanket support. But what you can do if you have 2 blankets is roll one of them and then stack that rolled blanket on top of the second one and roll it along the long edge. Then you're going to use another blanket or two, or potentially a bolster to place underneath the head. The main intention is to have a very similar height underneath the head that you're going to have across your upper back. For my setup today, I have a small bolster, an extra blanket on top of that. Actually, I'm going to swap this out for my larger bolster. And then I have my rolled blankets. There's a little bit of space between the setups. I'm going to demonstrate, and then you can go ahead and join me after that. I'm going to start first with my elbows on the rolled blanket. Knees are bent, feet are flat on the floor. And I can spread my elbows wide, and I feel the rolled blanket quite high on my upper back, almost as if it's right underneath the armpits. From here, I can pull the bolster in or the stack of blankets to almost help give a little pressure on the tops of the shoulders as your shoulders roll to the floor. You should feel like your head and your neck are completely supported here. Once you're comfortable, feel free to straighten the legs. If you ever feel any agitation in your back, you can always bend your knees again or even roll to the side and remove the blanket from your upper back. So if you haven't come into this already, you can start by bringing your elbows to the rolled blankets. As you spread your elbows wide, you'll lay back, feeling the rolled blankets underneath your upper back, close to the armpits, and the other support underneath your head and your neck. The shoulders should be free from support and ultimately draping towards the floor. Before you straighten your legs, give a little pressure into your feet and try to scoop your tailbone or your pelvis towards your heels. Whenever you're ready or feel comfortable, go ahead and straighten your legs. As you gently lengthen your inhale and exhale, try to fill the sides of the rib cage with air. Let go of any tension that might be holding in the jaw or throat. Notice if there's any tension in the eyes or forehead that can be let go of. As you tune your ears to the sound of your breath, just take note of any characteristics that stand out in your inhale and exhale. As you notice your mind wander, gently bring your focus back to your body and back to your breath. Notice if any tension has risen in the head, eyes, lips, or jaw, and see if you can release that gripping as you exhale. To come out of this pose, we'll slowly bend our knees, roll to the right side, and feel free to support your head as you turn towards the floor to come up. You can face your mat, coming on your hands and knees. Move your props off to the side. We're going to move into downward facing dog or Adho Mukha Svanasana. In this pose, we'll start with our mats cleared off. The hands are slightly forward from the shoulders, knees are slightly back from the hips. The hands are shoulder width apart while the knees are hip width apart. Then you'll curl your toes under and lift your hips up. Don't worry too much about taking your heels to the floor. Instead, as you press your hands down, try to lift your sit bones straight up to the ceiling. If you do take your heels to the floor, make sure to maintain that lift of your tailbone and sit bones up. You'll most likely feel a nice stretch in the calves, in the hamstrings. As you take a smooth, steady inhale and a smooth, steady exhale, let your head hang towards the floor. Rather than worrying about how close your chest or your head gets to the floor, really put an emphasis on lifting your sit bones up as you press your hands down in order to make the side waists and the spine nice and long. From here, we're going to come down with our knees wide and point your toes back. The toes will come together and sit back on your heels with your hands reaching forward. Adho Mukha Virasana or downward facing hero's pose. You can take a few breaths resting here. And we're going to go ahead and grab our bolster or a stack of blankets. We're actually going to use it to support our torso. So still the knees are wide, toes point back as the toes come together, and we're sitting on the heels. If there's any space between your hips and your heels, feel free to add some support underneath there. You can also create a nice stack on top of your bolster. Ultimately, we want this to be fairly comfortable for you, so you can add as much support as you would like onto that bolster. With your hips on your heels, you can lean forward and we'll just turn our head towards one side. For me right now, I'm turning my head towards the right shoulder, and we'll just take a few breaths, allowing the abdomen to soften, the hips to settle. As you slowly lengthen your inhale and exhale, just become attentive of any tension in the body or in the mind that might be able to be let go of. If there's a little bit of tension that doesn't seem to let go right now, just give it the space with your exhale, giving it the opportunity to let go when it's ready. Here, the arms are just resting on the floor. The front of the body should feel fairly supported. Now we'll turn our head to the other side. Inhale and exhale. And slowly press yourself up to sit. Shift your props off the mat. And then we'll come up to stand. As you face the long edge of your mat, step your feet wide. You can take your heels to the back long edge of the mat, and then we'll lean forward. Feel free to use some support underneath your hands. We'll take the hands a little bit wider than the shoulders today. So take a smooth, steady inhale. Lift your chest forward. Press your heels down, just like we did in downward facing dog. We're trying to lift the sit bones and tailbone up towards the ceiling. On your next exhale, you can bend your elbows and let the head hang, let the spine hang towards the floor. With every inhale and every exhale, notice how gravity can help lengthen the spine downward. There's a little bit of mindfulness needed to keep some space between the shoulders and the ears. Gently lengthening your inhale and exhale. As the mind wanders, bring it back to your body, to your breath. And then you can straighten your arms, heel toe step the feet together. So we're still in a forward bend, just bringing the feet together until the feet come underneath your hips. With the feet hip width apart, you can cross your arms, holding onto the elbows, and let the head hang, let the chest hang towards the floor. And bring your hands to the floor. As you lift your chest forward, take a few breaths with your gaze looking forward. We're going to take our time coming up to stand, just in case there's any lightheadedness or dizziness. And whenever you're ready, you'll bring your hands to your hips and slowly pull yourself up to stand. From here, we're actually going to go back to some seated postures. You're going to need a blanket or three to sit on as we take our legs wide. You'll also want to have a bolster and some blankets within an arm's reach. If you have a chair or some blocks, those might be ideal to use as well. Really, what's going to dictate what support is going to be most comfortable for you to let go of any tension in the mind or the body is going to be determined by the tightness in your hamstrings or potentially in your side waists. So if you feel that the hamstrings were really tight in the forward bends that we just practiced, a chair or some blocks might be more ideal for your support. The real intention here is to support the body enough so that the mind can let go of any tension that it's holding on to. Often, when the body is trying really hard to let go, the mind feels that tension as well, and it can be quite distracting. So use your own discernment. Usually, for restoring ourselves, more support is better. I have a fairly tall bolster, and I'm going to take a blanket, folded blanket, and just place it on top of that bolster for my support. I'm also sitting on a blanket that I'm going to fold so that it's going to be fairly thick. Once you have your props ready, you can have them nearby. We're still facing the long edge of our mat. We'll sit on our blanket and then take the legs wide. I like to use the edges of the mat to verify that my legs are symmetrically spaced from each other and my hips. I'm going to bring that bolster in, or if you have a chair, you can bring that close to you. Even some blocks you can bring nearby. We're just going to lean forward here. I really like the bolster and the chair support in particular because it does help support the front of the body a little bit more or add some extra height. As you take a nice deep inhale and exhale, you can start to lean forward. Keep pressing your heels down and have the toes pointing straight up towards the ceiling. Ultimately, the legs are still quite active here. You're welcome to rest your head on your arms or grab an extra blanket to place underneath your forehead. As you take a smooth, steady inhale and a smooth, steady exhale, let go of any tension or in your eyes, lips, or jaw. Slowly press yourself up to sit. Then we're going to switch our support over the left leg. So you can place your bolster over that leg or the chair over the legs. As you take a nice deep inhale and exhale, turn your rib cage towards the left foot. And then you'll lean forward, again resting the head on your arm or another blanket. Still the heels press down as the toes point straight up to the ceiling. On your next inhale, slowly lift yourself up and we'll switch which leg that support is on. I'm going to take a smooth, steady inhale, smooth, steady exhale. Turn your chest towards that right foot now. And you can lean forward, maybe resting your head on the arm or on another blanket. On your next inhale, slowly press yourself up to sit. Now we're going to bring our legs together in Baddha Konasana. So to do this, we're going to scoop underneath the knee. You can bend your knee, bringing your foot in towards the center of the pelvis, and then do the same to the other side. Ultimately, the feet will end up together, drawing a line to the center of your pelvis with the knees wide. You can take a few breaths here, sitting up nice and tall, or if you feel comfortable doing so, you can lean forward on your support. Whatever feels best for your body today. As you gently lengthen your inhale and exhale, take note of the experiences going on in your body. Often, if you feel that there's any major tension or restriction, it can be quite distracting and potentially a call to integrate more support.
With every inhale and every exhale, try to breathe fully, filling the lungs completely, expanding the rib cage. Notice as you inhale and exhale, that the sides of the rib cage can expand, as well as the back of the ribs. And you'll slowly lift yourself up. You can move your support slightly forward and to the side. We're going to bring our legs together and straighten the legs. Still sitting on our support, we're going to grab that support we were just leaning on and place it back on our lap or in front of us. And we're going to lean forward once more here with the feet straight. If you feel any tension in the low back, you can always separate the feet hip width apart. And leaning forward. Even though we're not extending an incredible amount of effort to keep the spine straight, do try to use your breath to lengthen the spine, to create space between the vertebrae. And slowly press yourself up to sit, lifting the chest nice and tall. Taking a nice deep inhale, a nice deep exhale. And you can shift your support off to the side. And bring your legs in. This is where we're going to grab a block, or you can even have a very thick folded blanket. We're going to practice a pose called Setu Bandha Sarvangasana, or bridge pose. The cool thing about having a block is you have a couple of different heights that you can adjust it to. Today we're going to be practicing on the lower height and the medium height. If you're experienced in this pose, then it might be worthwhile to try the high height. However, it is advised that you have some experience with this pose before going to the highest height on the block position. So just starting on the lowest one, if this is the first time you've practiced, We're also going to place it going across the back of our pelvis, although it will be directly underneath the tailbone. If you've never done this before or aren't familiar, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate. If you are familiar with this pose, feel free to come into it with me. I'm going to place the block off to my side within an arm's reach. From here, I have my feet flat, knees are bent. I'm going to scoot my hips towards my heels and lay back on the floor. Before I come into this pose, I'm going to hold on to the side edges of the mat. As I gently pull on the mat, turning my inner arms up, outer arms down, I can actually tuck my shoulders underneath me. Now I want to keep my chin in line with my chest the whole time. From here, I could bring my feet in and lift my hips up. Grabbing my block, I'm going to place the block underneath my pelvis. However, it's right under the tailbone, so it's lengthwise across the pelvis. However, it's a little bit lower on the buttocks than the sacrum or the base of the spine is. When your tailbone is supported, you can return your hands to the sides of the mat and then slowly straighten the legs. The heels press down as your toes point straight up to the ceiling. You might even find that you have a little bit more space to tuck the shoulders underneath you. It should feel as if more of your weight is coming on to the tops of the shoulders. As you take a smooth, steady inhale and a smooth, steady exhale, let go of any tension in the eyes, lips, or jaw. If you start to feel any agitation in your low back or your spine in general, you can always come out of this and rest your feet on the floor with your knees bent. We'll be here just for a few more breaths. Then you'll bring your feet back to the floor, lift your hips up, and move the block out of the way as you rest your hips down on the floor. Let's take a few breaths here, resting your thighs against one another. To come out, we'll take our arm up and overhead, roll to the side, and press ourselves up to sit. We're going to grab some support to practice a pose called Supta Baddha Konasana. Overall, you're going to need at least 2 blankets. You can also integrate a bolster, which I'm going to demonstrate. One of your blankets is going to be used almost like a pillow to support your head and your neck. So that's going to be placed at the top of the bolster. The second blanket is going to be unfolded twice from what we would call a shelf fold so that it's nice and long. From here, we're going to roll the long edge of the blanket. This is going to mimic a strap, so you're going to want it to be long enough to wrap around your ankles and tuck under your hips. I'm going to demonstrate where we're headed with this, and then we can practice together, or you can come along with me if you already know where we're headed. So I'm going to start with my feet together, knees wide. You can bring your heels as close to the pelvis as you desire. Just make sure the knees are comfortable here. Then I want about 2 fists distance of space from my pelvis and the bolster. I'm going to grab my rolled blanket, place it on the top of my feet, and then sweep it underneath the legs to tuck under the hips. From here, I'm ready to lay back. Take your hands and scoop the flesh of your buttocks away from your ears. Do this about 3 times. You really want to feel as though your pelvis is almost tucking towards your heels. Then feel all free to pull the ends of the blankets in and retuck them underneath the hips. Adjust the blanket under your head to support your head and your neck. As you take a nice deep inhale and exhale, just rest your hands on the floor. You'll have quite a bit of space between the hips and the wrists. You should have enough space that you can feel your armpits and the sides of the rib cage expanding as if they can breathe. Supta Baddha Konasana. So if you haven't joined me already, I'll go ahead and give some brief points to coming into this pose once more. You'll start with the feet together, knees wide. Make sure that the bolster is about 2 fists distance of space from the hips. Grab your rolled blanket, place it on the tops of your feet, and then as you sweep them across the floor, tuck the ends underneath your hips. Now you're ready to lay back. Feel free to pull the rolled blanket in a little bit more and retuck it under the hips, or adjust the blanket underneath your head to make sure that the neck is fully supported as well. Before you completely let go, use your hands to scoop the flesh of your hips and your buttocks away from you, almost as if to tuck your hips towards the heels. Do this 2 to 3 times. And do rest your hands on the floor. Make sure that there's enough space so that the sides of the rib cage and the armpit can breathe. Gently lengthen your inhale and exhale, feeling your body settle into the props and the floor. You're welcome to stay in this pose, or we're going to bring the legs together and straighten them one at a time. Taking a nice deep inhale and exhale, letting go of everything, everywhere. From here, we're actually going to lay flat on the floor with some support underneath our head. To do this, you'll slowly bring your knees in, or bend your knees, bringing your feet in and flat to the floor. And take your right arm up and overhead. As you hold your head, roll off to the right side. Go ahead and grab a blanket or some support for your head. And move the bolster out of the way before you roll back onto your back and lay flat on the floor. If your body feels cold at all, you can grab an extra blanket to drape over your body. So we're just resting with the feet about hip width apart, wrists are about a foot away from the hips. As you take a smooth, steady inhale and a smooth, steady exhale, feel your body settling into the floor. You'll feel your toes splay to the sides. As you gently lengthen your inhale and exhale, let go of any tension in the face, eyes, lips, or jaw. Start to let go of any gripping in the ears or even the skull. Slowly place your hands on your abdomen. Take a moment to appreciate your body for all that it's done and all that it will do. And slowly bend your knees and bring your right hand under your head. Roll to your right side, taking a few breaths here. And then whenever you're ready, you can push yourself up to sit. I appreciate you for taking the time to harmonize with your body today and rest and restore. Namaste. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this restorative class. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with your body. If you ever have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me and I would be happy to continue a conversation about it. I hope to see you next time.